can have it all. I can have it all.
Hello, everybody. It's Christy Whitman with the Quantum Success Show, where you can get your information and inspiration to create your desires. And as you can see, I have a very good-looking man next to me. You're welcome, ladies. His name is Phil Town, and I am thrilled to have him here because on this show, we talk a lot about the spiritual ways of money. And Phil is actually an amazing, brilliant man, and the way he teaches people to invest is the physical ways of working with money. So, Phil, I am so grateful that you are here, and you're a New York Times bestselling author. I have the privilege of sharing time with you in the Transformational Leadership Council. I met you years ago with Tim Ferriss, and it's been a long time, but we got to connect just recently, so I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
And I'm really thrilled to be here, Christy. It's just great to be able to talk about, I guess I like your breakdown about the sort of the physical aspect of money, like getting your act together in terms of how to do things, like the how-to side. But I got to tell you that the mental side of this is, and the spiritual side is just huge. You're right on it, exactly where you should be in terms of moving people forward. Is you got to get that side together. The other side's pretty easy, actually.
And I think what you're saying, like most people, I think that once I have money, now I'm terrified. I don't know what to do with it. Am I going to make a bad investment? I don't know what to invest in. So I think they're very intimidated by that. So that's why I was really excited to have you on the show, because if I'm doing my job correctly, I'm helping people open up to the possibility of more money, being able to have more value, bring value, so therefore bring money and create a different energetic relationship with money. So now they have it in their hot little hands or in their bank account where they're not really making much money from it sitting there. So that's why it's great to now take this conversation and teach them what can they do with it. So you have some specific rules that I would love to talk about. So what is number one rule, the rule number one, and what makes it different from other styles of investing?
Well, let's start with that latter part of the question. What makes this different? This strategy that we call Rule 1 investing different is that it's practiced by the best investors in the world, and it's been practiced by the best investors in the world for over 85 years. These concepts and strategies that we use have been taught initially and developed by Ben Graham in about 1930, who became the father of value investing and also the mentor of Warren Buffett at Columbia University.
Wow.
And Buffett actually worked for Ben Graham for a couple of years before going out on his own. And from Warren Buffett, we've learned that my teacher learned to invest. And then from my teacher, I learned to invest. And now I'm helping other people with the process. And so this thing has kind of been passed down for the last 85 years. This thing I call Rule 1 investing. Buffett doesn't really have a name for it. Ben Graham called it value investing, but the way people use that term now has come to mean just super cheap stocks, and that isn't what we buy. We're looking for great opportunities where there's a difference between the price and the value of the business. So let me tell you where the first rule comes from. It basically boils down to this. Ben Graham said there's really only two rules of investing. Rule number one, don't lose money, and rule number two, don't forget rule number one. So it's really down to one simple rule that people think is the result of good investing, that you don't lose money. In other words, they almost think it's like a joke, right? Buy low, sell high, don't lose money. This all seems kind of silly. But it isn't silly at all to think of the primary focus of a good investor is to not have a reduction of capital, to not lose money in a permanent kind of way. This is what we strive very hard to do. And when you put that as the foremost priority, you're going to have your priorities in the correct order. So if you say, okay, Christy, you're going to go out and you're going to look for a business, you're going to look for a piece of real estate, you're going to look for a farm, you're going to look for a franchise, you're going to look at a public stock. All of these things are viewed through the same lens. When we step into this investment, what we're looking at is making sure that in the long run, we won't lose money on this thing. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Absolutely.
That's the major focus here. So we take this real seriously. We say, okay, what's the first thing you're thinking about? Well, the first thing you're thinking about, if you're thinking about trying to make money is how much can this go up? But if the first thing you're thinking about is not losing any, then what you're worried about is where are all the places this can go wrong?
Exactly.
What can happen here that will end up making a permanent loss of capital? So we end up going through a series of concepts, a small series of concepts that we look at real closely and try to identify something that one of the greatest investors in the world, who does kind of the way I do it, is a guy named Monesh Pabrai out of India. And what Monesh has said is that the best way to think about this is we're looking for free lottery tickets. We're looking for something that's not going to go down. Whatever happens, it's not going down. And it has a lot of potential to go way up. Like a lottery ticket can pay off big, right? But if you don't have any chance of losing your money, that's a pretty special kind of lottery ticket. You'd like to get as many of those as you could possibly find.
Sure.
So that's what we're out looking for.
Okay.
To follow that rule number one. So we look, don't lose money, stay real focused on that thing, and the rest of it will fall into place if you're just patient. That's the key. Okay?
So let me ask you this then. If investing is so simple, why isn't everybody doing it? Why are so many people so intimidated by it?
Okay, well, simple isn't necessarily the same thing as easy. So, for example, snowboarding is pretty simple, but there's a learning process that lots of people don't want to go through.
I'm a skier, so definitely I get you there. So.
You get me there. Yeah. You've seen those people out there in the first 3 days just getting pounded. But the interesting thing about snowboarding is I always wanted to learn to snowboard for many years, but I never wanted to not ski on big powder days, so I never really bothered. And then my kids, Elena and Danielle, both got to where they really didn't want to ski anymore. They wanted to snowboard because that's what their friends did when we were living in Jackson Hole. And so I decided I'd learn with them, And I thought, I'm a skier. I know how to do this. And I'll just go up on the mountain and I'll figure it out, right? I read a couple books. How hard could it be?
I read a couple books. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. I've been hit hard before. And I have never been hit as hard as I got hit the first time I hooked an edge on a snowboard. And it was like a giant picked me up by my feet and whapped me into the ground. And I thought, wow, I better get an instructor. That was the first thing out of my head was, if I can make it down this mountain, I'm going to go straight to an instructor. So it's very much like that, is that the process is very simple, but if you don't follow it kind of precisely, it's a little scary for people. Like right now I'm doing a podcast with my daughter Danielle called Invested, and it's really kind of fun because she hates investing, really hates it, doesn't want to do it, and yet knows just that the financial realities are that if you put your money into the hands of other people to invest it in today's world, in today's market, there's a very good chance that you will not have enough to retire on. Mm. The normal person, I'm talking, my daughter Danielle is an attorney. She makes attorney money, and she is not going to get to the lifestyle that she wants without basically staying as slave labor the rest of her life. And she wants more opportunities in her life. She wants to be able to be financially independent like I am. And I told her I'm not going to give her any money, so she has to deal with that. Just the way it goes. I'm going to die broke. I'm spending my last dollar and then I'm out.
And snowboarding lessons.
Exactly. So she's really struggling to overcome her fear of investing, her fear of losing money. The fears that everybody has who don't know anything about it, which is what results in people going to robo-advisors like Betterment and just putting their money out there, or going to a financial advisor, or putting their money in mutual funds or exchange-traded funds instead of learning, going through this process of learning. But I'll tell you, more and more people are finding that those choices are not going to get them where they need to be. It's just that the numbers don't work, Yeah. So one real important, I think, thing I think for everybody watching this is that Ray Dalio is one of the best investors in the world. He runs a hedge fund called Bridgewater that has averaged 18% a year now for 36 years. Wow. So phenomenal, right? He has $120 billion under management, and he does it with a view of the global economy, essentially, finding places where he can make money in the global economy. And his stated view right now is that we are at the end of about a 75 to 80 year cycle of economic growth and prosperity that is now going to result in a total rebalancing, a total debt reduction, and that can often and usually does mean a depression and war. In other words, the downside of where we're sitting right now with the most debt that the world has ever seen by far, the downside is depression and war when this has ever happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And what Ray is hopeful is that the Federal Reserve, smart people, will be able to make this rebalancing a soft landing. But we're going to go through a terrible time in the sense of long-term investing is simply not going to work for the next 10 to 20 years. The average rate of return over the last 140 years for any 20-year period that has the stock market priced where it is right now, the average rate of return runs between minus 2% at the low end and 5% at the high end. Wow. In other words, it could be not much at all through bonds and stocks for the next 20 years. And if you put those numbers into your projections for where you're going to be financially in 20 years, where you hope to retire, where you hope everything's going to be cool, and you run in a 1% gain on your portfolio and see what happens, probably you're going to find out you're not going to get there. Not only that, but projections for what it's going to cost to live a $50,000 lifestyle in 20 years is about double a $50,000 lifestyle, about $100,000. And in order to have $100,000 in that economic environment that will pay you $50,000 a year means you need a 5% return in a 1% market. Okay? So how's that going to work? How are you going to have enough? How are you going to grow enough to get there? And the answer is you need to have a couple $1 million between now and 20 years from now, or you're in trouble. And that's for a $50,000 a year lifestyle.
Wow.
Yeah, that's sobering, eh?
Yeah.
Now, you hear the good news?
Yeah, please, before I get a gun. Just kidding.
Get a gun. Now, the good news is that this strategy has public audited portfolios. Every single public fund manager over the last, this goes from Graham on, so the last 80 years, every one of them has been tracked by Warren Buffett. And he gave a talk to Columbia a few years ago where he laid out every single one of the portfolios that everyone who does this style of investing had over at least a 20-year period of time. And the lowest rate of return was 18%.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right? They had people on that list who were making 34% a year.
Wow.
For over 20 years. Now, let's take an example of somebody with, let's say $10,000 right now, and 20 years they're going to retire. And let's say they can put $10,000 a year in or something like, not even 10, put in $5,000 a year. They're going to have so much money in 20 years, they don't really want to know what to do with it all.
Cool.
Just starting from that point. I mean, think about 10,000 growing where it's doubling every 3 years. So in a 20-year period of time, you've got 7 doubles. So 10,000 becomes 20, 40, 80, 160, 320, 640, $1.28 million.
Wow.
That's the first 10,000. The second 10,000 gets there also. So now you got 3 million or 2.5 million. And the third 10,000 almost gets there. So that puts you at about 4 million. The fourth 10,000. In other words, if you just keep saving at $5,000 to $10,000 a year, and you know how to get this rate of return, money is not going to be an issue.
That's awesome.
Which is awesome. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, of course. You were starting to depress me there for a while, but now there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
So let me get back to your question, which was, why doesn't everybody do this?
Yeah.
Right? Why doesn't everybody do it? First, let's deal with professionals, because that would be the first group you would expect to be investing like this, because it would make them heroes.
Sure.
Right? Wow, 18% a year, 20% a year, you're in Buffett's league. Okay? So Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, said that that the reason that people don't do this is because they have been taught a system of investing which says that you cannot beat the market. So if you believe that you cannot beat the market, and that's what you've been taught in business school,
Right.
and that's been the paradigm in business school for 35 years, then you're going to invest in a very different way than if you believe you can beat the market. If you think no stock ever goes on sale, that no one invests emotionally in the market, no one ever makes a mistake, it's all completely rational, then you would never invest like Buffett and Munger, right? You would never do that.
Right.
So to get those returns that they're getting, you need to be able to sit in cash patiently for a year or 2 years and do nothing. You need to have, Warren Buffett said their strategy is laziness bordering on sloth. Okay? So you got to be able to sit there and do nothing and wait until you get this opportunity. Okay? Portfolio fund managers cannot do that. They have to invest now. They have to be smart now. They have to try to beat the market now. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to try to be very active, invest a lot of money, and that always fails because there's not bargains every day. There's not something that's wonderful that's on sale every day. Not going to happen. All right, so the first thing is you have to be patient, and none of them can be patient. The second thing is you have to believe that there are things on sale. Or why would you look for one?
Right.
Okay, so 99% of them don't believe that, so they're not going to look for any. And third, there's a cautionary tale, a cautionary story of fund managers who've tried to do what Buffett's tried to do. And that tale goes like this. You go out and gather in $5 billion because you've worked hard and you've been successful and you've made good investments. Now you have $5 billion. If you were to have a moment where your stock price goes down for a year, the ones you own, and the market goes up, that $5 billion will disappear. All those people will take their money out. Okay? This strategy of investing requires that you be able to go through those periods of time when the market is pricing your companies lower than the price you paid for them. This strategy requires that. Because what we're looking to do is find companies that are on sale, buy them when they're on sale, but we don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
So essentially what Warren Buffett taught us is that we're looking for $10 bills that are available for $5. So first off, most of the people in the world who are investing don't think that exists.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if we find one and we can buy it for $5, we know to do that we have to be patient because they don't grow on trees. So we're patient. Most of the people in the world cannot be patient. But now we find one, all right? We bought it for $5. And the price goes down, and tomorrow, a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, we could buy that same $10 bill for $3, all right? Now that drop from $5 to $3 blows out every investor you'll ever have. They all will leave.
Yeah.
Because what it looks like is you're losing money.
Right.
But if you believe that price is not value, then what you're going to see is that it's still a $10 bill. It's just that you could buy more at $3 today than you could several months ago when it was selling for $5. So you think about that for a second and you think, if the value is still 10, am I freaking out that I bought that first part at $5? Or am I really excited that I can buy more now at $3? All right. So Warren talks about it like this. He said, by the way, this is stuff you don't hear about Warren Buffett every day, right?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So your folks are getting some cool things here.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the inside story, what really goes on out there for great investors. So Buffett puts it like this. If you're going to go buy hamburgers, you love hamburgers, you're going to eat hamburgers all day. If your family is just going to eat hamburgers, then do you want the price of hamburger to go up or down in the future?
Down.
Down. right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go buy gasoline, you're going to buy gasoline for your car or electricity for your plug-in. Do you want the price of gasoline and electricity to go up or down in the future?
Down.
Down. So if you're going to be consuming stocks in the future, you're going to buy stocks all in the future. Do you want the price of those stocks to go up or down?
Down.
Down.
That's interesting.
Down. And that is completely non-intuitive.
I know, I heard myself saying it, and I'm like, but that's the exact opposite of what I've always heard.
But yeah, because you just go, whoa, I want those stocks to go up. But wait a second. You're not retired yet. You got 20 years to go. You want to buy wonderful businesses that are on sale. So you don't want stocks to be at the highest price they've been in the last 20 years, which is where they are right now. You want them to be cheap, just like hamburgers and gas and electricity.
Wow. You
No
put it
difference
that
at all.
way.
Now, this little insight of Buffett's is a different paradigm. So my final answer to why do people not all do this is because they're not in this paradigm. They believe in a flat earth, works pretty good most of the time, unless you sail to the edge, right? Then you fall off. That's what it looks like.
Right.
Right? So don't do that. That's what they're saying.
Wow.
And we just believe the earth is round and you can sail around that earth. And it's not rocket science. It's not something that's hard to do. It's easy to do, like snowboarding or riding a bike. But you need a coach. You need somebody holding your hand. And I'm not saying that because I'm volunteering to be everybody's coach. I'm saying that because there's a lot of non-intuitive things that are going on there. Just like riding a bike, just like snowboarding.
Absolutely. And I know you have some free gifts, and so people can learn more about you and how to learn more about this. But
Sure.
If someone doesn't, do they need a lot of money, or does someone, if they have only a little bit or they don't have any, how do they start doing this?
Yeah, the best thing in the world is to have a little money. Honestly, it gives you so much power. I got a good book for you guys to read. It's called The Dondo Investor, Dhando. Dondo means business investor, by a guy named Monesh Prabhai that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. He basically talks about the Patel family that got run out of Uganda in 1960 and lost everything they owned and came to America and started with virtually nothing, a couple $1,000s. And that family now owns 40% of the hotels in the country.
Wow.
So in whatever that is, 50 years, right? Now, their formula that Monesh talks about in this book is to start with very little money. Money that you can replace if you lose it, right? So someone who has a couple $1,000s is actually in a more powerful position as an investor than someone with several $1 million.
Wow.
Because you lose that several million, you're in real trouble, right? You've had a horrendous result. You can't just make that back in a couple of years of hard work. Whereas if I go lose what I started with, right, $1,000, which would be $2,000 today, if I went and lost that on the first investments because I didn't know enough, I could work for 6 months or a year and I'd have $2,000 again. And I would have learned something.
Yes.
Okay? So the cool thing here is that starting with very little gives you wonderful, wonderful power. And since we know that if you're making a great rate of return like we're talking about, your starting point isn't that important.
That's
the rate
good to
of
know.
return is what's important, right?
Right.
So if you're starting now with a couple $1,000s, you can keep earning money, keep your day job, and get to 10,000. We already saw what you can do with 10,000. You can become a multi-millionaire with $10,000 a year.
That's
No
amazing.
problem.
All right. So what are the steps in learning your strategy? Because now I'm salivating.
Okay. So
I'm gone from wanting a gun to salivating. So this is good, Phil.
good. And we've had quite an emotional ride here. Christy, that's awesome. Well, here's what I would say you'd have to learn. The first thing is you learn what what we call the 4 M's. I'll go through the way Charlie Munger said them. He said, he was doing this with the BBC not too long ago, and it's quite good. I'll just repeat it. He said, the number one thing you have to know is, am I capable of understanding this business? So just think about it like a piece of real estate, Christy. It's like you'd go and look at a house that somebody might want to sell you, and you think, is it in a good location, good neighborhood, good schools? Is the location going to be good 20 years from now, or is it going downhill? those are the basics, right? I mean, is a foundation good? Though? Just the basics of a real estate deal. Same thing for a stock. Am I capable of understanding all real estate deals? No, right?
Right.
I'd be lost in a New York real estate deal. I don't know what Trump does or what Barbara does, from the Shark Tank. I don't know, but I can understand a house down the street. If somebody sell it cheap enough to me, I'd buy it. Right?
Makes sense.
Done. Because I know what it would rent for, and I know what I would get in cash out of that deal. We treat businesses the same way. The first thing is, am I capable of understanding the basics of the business? Now, for me, not so good at doing things like Intel, computer chips, stuff like that. I can't tell you if Tesla's going to win. Down the road, I'm rooting for them, but I don't know. But burritos, I can figure out burritos. So if I can figure out a handful of companies to put on my list of things I understand, good. That's all I need.
Okay, makes sense.
And in my entire lifetime, I'm only going to buy 20 of them, so no big deal. I can figure out a few companies.
Okay.
That's the first thing. Know what your circle of competence is, and don't get out of the circle. Stay inside there. All right, first thing. Second thing is, does this business have what Buffett calls a moat? Right? And what he means by that is there something intrinsic to the business that protects it from competition for the long haul? Right? So let's take an example of a company that's the low-cost producer of oil, let's say. They can drill. For some reason, they just know how to do it. They can drill cheaper than anybody in the world. That's a tremendous protective barrier against competition. All right. Another one would be a company that has a right to sell you electricity. So here in Georgia, I buy electricity from Southern Company. They have almost a monopoly. I have to put a windmill up, it's going to cost me a lot to even compete with what they're delivering. So they have a monopoly. That's an intrinsic characteristic that's part of the business. If I bought a railroad company that has tracks from LA to Chicago, and they're the only ones with tracks from LA to Chicago, what would it cost me to put in tracks and compete with them?
Right.
I couldn't even get the land. So that's an intrinsic characteristic that protects them from competitors. That's what you're looking for. Okay. So that's called a moat. The third thing is we want managers, CEOs who have integrity and who are talented. And by integrity, I mean that you don't see them screwing over their employees. You don't see them screwing over the environment. You don't see them, this is my view of integrity, right?
Right.
You don't see them saying one thing and doing something else entirely.
Right.
So that you can trust them to do the same thing they've been doing the last 20 years. So you read about them, you read their history, see if they've been successful in the past, and then you hope that they will continue to have that kind of integrity. Okay, so for me, I have a real problem when people are paying themselves $20 million a year and they're firing people.
Right.
Yeah. That bothers me. I want to see people lead the way, I learned from in the infantry. I went to Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning many years ago, but the lesson stuck with me. And the lesson was feed your people first, make sure they're sleeping first, make sure they've got the knowledge they need to do their job first, and then you take care of you. Mm. And the CEOs we see today are doing it exactly the opposite way.
Right.
They're feeding themselves first. They're sleeping first. They're getting all the benefits first. And then maybe there's something left for the people who work there or the shareholders or whoever.
Right.
So I'd love to see us reverse that trend. And the only way we're going to reverse that trend is to take control of our money. The day you stop giving your money to mutual fund managers and exchange-traded funds is the day those CEOs stop doing the kind of stuff they're getting away with. So I think that's a huge thing.
That's huge.
That's the third. And then the fourth thing is what Ben said is the most important 3 words of investing: margin of safety. So we might be off on our understanding of the business, on the management team, on the moat. But if we've bought it at a great price, we've got protection there against the markets going up and down, right? So the what Charlie calls the vicissitudes of the market, which just means that the market just fluctuates. And in order to be safe against a market fluctuation, which, by the way, Ray Dalio is saying we are in for, a big one like this, right? So in order to protect yourself against that, you have to buy companies only when they're on sale. You have to buy those $10 bills for $5. Now, the beautiful thing here is that, contrary to the people who teach everyone how to invest in business schools, who believe the market is always priced properly, which means it can never go up and down, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because it goes up and down all the time,
right.
50%, right? We think that the market fluctuations are a natural part of the market, that this is going to happen no matter what. And so if you're just patient, especially now, Christy, if you learn to do this and wait 2 years, you will become a very rich person. It's going to, I know you are already, but more. So that this fluctuation goes down like this, then all these companies go on sale. Our little list.
Yeah.
We say, oh, this is worth $100, this is worth $100, this is worth $100. All of a sudden, they're available for $40 because the market took everything down with it. All of the stocks went down. And when they all go down because of some outside influence, right, some economic recession or whatever, when they all go down, then those wonderful companies are on sale. And guess who's buying them? Nobody. They're selling them, getting rid of them because now they're afraid. So all these investors who are buying right now because the market's been going up for 6 years, those people will be in a panic state. When next time it goes down, they'll be selling everything, right? And the ones that aren't selling are terrified that they're holding, but they're holding something only worth half of what it was a year ago. And now they're going to retire in 5 years, and oh my God, what am I going to do?
Right.
The market doesn't return. So what we're doing is we're sitting in cash, waiting for that to happen. And when it happens, we have our list. Oh yeah, here's Chipotle Mexican Grill for $200. Cool, I'll buy that. It's awesome. A great burrito company. I'm going to eat their burritos. It's $200. It used to be $700. I'll buy it for $200. Okay, here's Whole Foods. They used to be $60. Okay, now they're $6. That actually happened, by the way.
Wow.
Whole Foods in 2009 went down to $5.
Wow.
Yep. Chipotle Mexican Grill went down to $50. So, I mean, you can get these fabulous companies on sale. You don't have to know a lot. You only have to know that business. That's all. Just like buying that real estate next door.
Awesome. Phil, you're amazing. So I know you got a couple things. You got a transformational investing webinar, and then you also have a PDF that they can download with the 3 myths. So I'm going to put all that under a link under the video, as I just hit my elbow. So under the video, there's a link. Just go ahead and click there, and you'll be able to go and learn a lot more information from Phil. So,
rocks. Thanks, Christy.
Any last words, Phil? That was a lot.
Yeah, I would say that right now is one of the most wonderful times to learn to invest and one of the scariest times not to in the history of about 3 or 4 generations. And so you're at a great time, but you're at a junction point. And I would strongly recommend you learn from me. Just read Warren Buffett, something. And most important, here's what I'm going to tell you the most important thing is. Most important thing is to listen to Christy and get the spiritual side of this and get it right, because you're not going to move forward until you can. And so there you go.
Very true. So grateful that we can combine both sides of the money, the spiritual aspect, the physical aspect, and there's strategies obviously here and there's strategies here, and when you combine them both, it's like, oh.
By the way, did you may not even know, I talk about the idea of investing that was given to me by some of my mentors. Dr. Jonas Salk was one of my mentors, who developed the Salk polio vaccine and runs the Salk Institute in San Diego. And he died a few years ago, but he was a mentor of mine. And one of the things that he told me was that he was able to achieve what he achieved in his life because he burned the ships. And he burned the ships because he believed, right? You understand burn the ships,
No.
right? What that comes from is Cortez landed on the shores of Mexico.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah.
And his guys got off the boat, all 300 of them, and realized they were up against about 10 million Aztecs with hatchets. And they started to go run back and get on the boats. But Cortez put boats on fire so they couldn't leave. And they had to win or die.
Yeah.
So Salk said, it's the spiritual side that you have to connect to, and that the thing that you connect with is this dream you have. And that if you can, you like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, right up your alley. If you can commit to the dream, then nature brings things to you you could have never imagined would happen. And that's what happened to him. I spent time with Steve Jobs. That's what happened to him. And that's what happened to me. That's what's happened with my wife, Melissa. That's what happened with every person I've ever seen be successful, is that in one form or another, they connected their spiritual side to that larger self, that bigger thing, whatever they called it. And that process and a full commitment, right? Burn the boats, changed everything.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. That's huge.
You're welcome.
And I know my audience will, my family, as I call them, love that because it's, they're into the spiritual side and many of them need to kind of get out of the comfort zone and learn the physical side. So thrilled to have you here. I always enjoy my interactions with you. I just adored you from the moment I've met you.
You're the best,
Oh,
Christy. Thank you. I
Phil.
adore you too.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you again soon.
Me
Bye.
too. January?
Yeah, January.
Perfect.
See you
So
there.
to everybody else, leave us a comment. Let me know what you're taking away from this. Phil gave so much information. I really do encourage you to go under the video, click there. If you're feeling nervous or unsure about that, go get more information. So thanks again, Phil. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Yes, Christy. See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching, and here is a related video to watch right now. Also, check out my free webinars on creating whatever you want in your life using the universal laws that I explain in each webinar. So share your thoughts by leaving a comment and continue the conversation at ChristyWhitman.com.